All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're tuning in from. And for those watching live and also the recording, hello as well. I'm Karan from GitHub, and welcome to another episode of Open Source Friday live stream, where we bring in a whole lot of different open source maintainers, creators, projects, and others to learn more about their projects, what's happening, their journey, and also for all of you to discover so many different projects that are actually helping developers and various other folks all across. So today we have the creator and maintainer of the AdonisJS framework, Harminder Virk, and we'll chat a lot more about this framework, about Harminder's journey, and how this framework can really help, and how it is really kind of helps stand out amongst a sea of or an ocean of JavaScript frameworks which are out over there. So let's say hello to Harminder. Hi, Harminder.
Hey, hi, Karan. How are you?
Doing good, thanks. How are you?
Doing pretty good.
Great, great. Thanks so much for joining us on this live stream. So really excited to know more about Adonis as a framework, the thought process behind it, and all of that as well. But before that, let's just get started with a little bit understanding kind of your journey as a developer and your foray into open source itself. So how did your journey as a developer really begin, and what was that point when you got very interested in code?
Yeah, I think I started back in 2008 or 9. And that was a time when, like most of the people used to start with PHP. And it's like one giant PHP file where you basically write the PHP code, you make SQL queries, you put HTML into the same file, and then you basically like create web pages. That's where I started. I like never did any like official schooling, or I never did any engineering masters or anything like that. I just got curious because I was learning French, and during that time, I wanted to create basically a social platform for my French university, where like everyone can basically chat in French and they can make friends, and it basically makes learning French a lot easier. And in order to build that, I realized it's not really that easy. So I started playing with HTML and a bit of PHP, and that basically like shifted my entire journey from like learning French to basically learning programming languages.
Nice. So it's a problem, that kind of came up, or kind of an idea which really helped you think about, okay, how do I now solve this with code, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Very interesting that you mentioned about PHP, and now you're kind of a maintainer of a JavaScript framework. So what was it like back for you then, or what was it which really kind of attracted you to the JavaScript, TypeScript, Node.js ecosystem? So was there some sort of libraries or frameworks that you were drawn to, saying that, whoa, this is really good, kind of a thing?
Yeah, I think, but even that framework was in PHP. So when I was like writing normal PHP code, I tried several different frameworks, and finally I found Laravel. It was like Laravel 3 back then when I started using it. It's like really popular right now, and I used Laravel for maybe like 6 or 7 months, and then I moved to a new company where I basically started writing like JavaScript out of nowhere. I knew like the backend concepts, and in this company, again, I have to build backend applications, but not using PHP. It was JavaScript, and it was like something very new for me. That was the very first time I used Express, which is like this minimal routing library in the Node ecosystem. So that was like my transition from PHP to JavaScript. Nothing like I got excited about any particular framework or anything. It's like I switched jobs. Now in the new one, I have to learn JavaScript and basically start doing things using Node.
Nice. So what was the first kind of a touch point to open source itself outside of course using Laravel or anything else? What was kind of that first contribution per se which really attracted you to open source and then said that okay, this is something interesting.
Yeah, I think the very first thing I did would be NG-CLI, which is more like Amber CLI that I built for Angular. And it was like when Angular was just Angular, like not the second version when the entire rewrite happened. So when I got into the JavaScript world, of course, I was learning Express and I was trying to build like these backend services for the company I was working for. But also, I was trying basically like playing with other JavaScript frameworks as well. And that time, I found Amber, which was really nice. It comes with like a nice CLI that you can use to basically scaffold everything. And when I started playing with Angular, there was nothing like that. So the very first thing I built was basically ng-CLI, which is an Amber-like CLI for Angular. That was the first touch point, and then basically started, like building more packages.
Nice, that's great. So, what was kind of the initial motivation to build Adonis framework, and also if you can give a really kind of like a high level overview before we jump into a little bit on the code, as to what are the pain points that you intend to solve or kind of have solved with Adonis that's probably different from many of the other frameworks out there.
I think the motivation was really simple when I started, like basically using Express, which is just a routing library. I have to pretty much figure out everything of my own in every single project. So there are like so many packages, and every time you start a new project, you start with like 0 files, and then you make your way up from there. Okay, which ORM should I use? Which validation library should I use? And how do I wire up everything? And when I compare this experience with my experience of using Laravel, it was really different. With Laravel, you like basically get everything right out of the box, and you can start building your applications, which made me think, okay, maybe I can, like start building something quite similar to Laravel, but for myself, so that I can quickly, like scaffold new projects. I built it, shared it online, and found like there are more people who want something like this, and they all like tried it on AdonisJS. Of course, it was not like the best thing that I've built. That was like version 1, but there were like a lot of feedback from everyone. People were really interested, and then we started iterating to reach where we are today.
That's great. That's great. So before we kind of double click a little bit on Adonis and also your journey, Harminder. Would you mind giving us like a quick demo of how Adonis would really work and look like in practice for a JavaScript developer, and how it would really come together?
Yeah, sure. I think I will have like a example application that I can show you. So the idea here is to basically touch on few things. First, how does the flow of a request looks like when you're building applications using AdonisJS? Like, how does a request comes into the framework, how it gets handled, and how do you, like basically do standard things like talking to the database? That's one aspect. The other one is the type safety, basically how you can quickly navigate between things from one place to the other, and how you can have type safety within your backend application, but also to your front end code, which could be written in like Vue or React. So that could be the second thing. And the final one would be all the features that you get right out of the box with the framework. So you don't have to hunt for different libraries and put together everything to, like essentially like spending a week just wiring things up versus building the actual features. So let's
Perfect.
give it a try. 1 second. Where it is? Okay. I hope you can see my code editor right now.
Yes. Yes.
Cool. So this is how like a AdonisJS application looks like. You have all these directories pre-created for you when you create a new app, and mostly you will always start with this file. That's the routes file. And in this file, you define the routes of your application, which are like essentially the endpoints someone can visit. And once there is a request, AdonisJS will basically call the corresponding controller and the action on that controller. So let's say if we look at this controller out here, which is the polls controller, and we go to this file, and out here we have multiple methods. We have the index, create, store, and all these methods are created to handle requests on different routes. And this index one essentially then like basically uses the ORM to talk to the database and then render a template. And if you notice, within this one method, you can see what's happening during a request. So you have like access to all the request data within this method. Then you talk to the ORM to say, okay, I want to fetch all the polls in this case, which are not expired. And I also want to, like basically get a sum of all the votes that have been posted on that particular poll. Then we do the pagination. And once finally we have the data, we use this library called inertia. We can talk more about inertia. And we render this template, which is a React component. And if I click on it, it takes me to the React component, which is essentially like showing the list of all the polls. And in here, you have like all the type safety. You can say, okay, I want the poll data within this component. And you can see like all these types. And essentially, you are not writing these types by hand. They are all inferred from your backend application, which means you have like this type safety, essentially like end-to-end type safety from your backend to the front-end application. So that sums up, like the flow of how a request comes in and how you basically render a template.
So got it. One question here, Harminder, is is the ORM also a part of Adonis, or user is free to choose whatever ORM they want?
Yeah. So by default, we use this ORM called Lucid. So if I go to this poll model, which is using basically the base model from the ORM, which is Lucid. But if you want, you can like just not install Lucid, which is a separate package, and you can pull in anything you like. But I would like to mention one thing. For example, if we go to these validators, and here you can see we have a unique rule within our validation library, which natively connects to the ORM to make sure that email is like unique within the user's table. So once you plug out the ORM, you won't be able to use this unique rule. Of course, you can add a custom rule which connects to your ORM, whatever you are using, but you will lose out on like all this pre-built integration within the official packages that you essentially get for free.
Got it. That's helpful. Thanks. Yeah. Please proceed.
Yeah. So as I was talking about, like this is how the request flows inside AdonisJS application. It's the route, and then the request is handed over to a controller. Within the controller, you basically write all the logic. If you want, it can be within a single function. If you want, you can create abstractions. And here, like we have a very typical controller action, which uses the ORM, renders a template. Now, if you look at another action, which is like storing the poll inside the database, once again, within this one method, you can see what's happening. So we are like validating the request. We are using this validator, which is again type safe. If I go back, I have like all the type information like after the request has been validated. We have a title, duration, and the poll options. One more time, we can talk to the ORM and we can essentially write things to the database. And in a sense, AdonisJS is like, this is what it does. So you have like a dedicated place to keep all your things, be it your validators, controllers, models. All these are official libraries so that you can start building things without like hunting, okay, which ORM should I use? And yeah, that's like pretty much all. If you have any specific questions, of course, we can dive into those parts.
Got it. One question that I have, I think looking at the controllers, the routes, etc. It kind of seems also very opinionated and also a full stack approach, like how you mentioned, similar to what like a Laravel might do, or what something like a Rails might do, because I see the routes is kind of something very similar to probably what Rails has as well, right? So what was the inspiration, or how did you kind of decide which opinions to really enforce in the framework?
I think it was, I would say, mainly my experience of using MVC frameworks more than anything else. As I mentioned, I was very drawn to Amber, which was again like a very MVC kind of framework in the front end world. They also had like this like models layer and controllers and templates and all that. And then also using Laravel, which was again a MVC framework. So it was essentially me experiencing the MVC paradigm and enjoying, I would say, opinionated framework, which made me, okay, like build a thing which I actually like.
Got it. So, looking probably, or probably not comparing with Laravel or Rails, etc. Right? When you think about just going about building Adonis as a framework, etc. Right? What are kind of really some design decisions you had to take, or you kind of feel that really sets apart from very many of the other MVC frameworks?
Yeah. I think one thing that we really like take care of is the type safety aspect within the framework, whether it's like getting suggestions from what all you can use, to having like type safety in your data layer, and having like the ability to jump from one thing to the other. That's like something we stress a lot about, and that sometimes also change how like things or the API end up looking like. So TypeScript plays a huge role. The other one is uh, we like try to build a lot of high level abstractions, so that like if you want to do something, you should be able to express that within like few lines of code without really like getting into the nitty gritty of things. For example, if I go to the login controller, if you want to log in someone, this is essentially all the code you have to write. So you use your model and you say, okay, I want to verify the user credentials. You give it the email and the password. And this verify credentials method also take care of timing attacks. So it's like really secure. And then you use this auth object and you say, okay, I want to log in this user. So you're not like really dealing with, okay, now we'll pull in this library to do the authentication, and then I will write like the user serialization logic, or from where I can look up the users and all that. So we have like a lot of these really high level abstractions, which gives you one or two liner APIs to essentially like complete a task.
Nice, nice. That's really helpful to know. And so, if you think about it, right? Where do you kind of really see kind of the sweet spot for something like Adonis to be used? Of course, one thing that you mentioned is the real importance when it comes to type safety, and in use cases where that's really important. But what's really kind of, you can say that, okay, there's this kind of really a really good use case for such scenarios, outside of the abstraction, the type safety piece, and also the batteries included.
I think, like, let's say if you're building any kind of, like a app which is going to be backend heavy, where you will be talking to the database a lot, you will be, like having backend jobs, you will be sending emails to the user, like basically a typical SaaS app or any application which has like all this backend logic, and you want to quickly start building it. And again, like Node is like is like your go-to platform for doing that. Maybe like using AdonisJS will be really beneficial for you, and you might even enjoy the framework if you like using opinionated tools. So that, I would say, is like the typical use case for using Adonis.
Got it. Got it. Great. That's helpful. Thanks for that quick walkthrough, Harminder. So coming back a little bit towards kind of open source itself, right? Whether any like were there any mentors or any kind of people that you really took inspiration from? So how did you kind of really learn the ropes of how all of this actually works, whether resources or anything else that you kind of really tuned into?
I would say it's pretty much like by exploring the code bases, like other than, so I don't have like any mentors that I talk to or any people, like that I go to if I need any help. It's usually, like finding inspiration in the wild. It could be, like you look at someone who has built a really nice abstraction for something and you try to study the code base and see, okay, how they did it. And other than that, if I'm like building any feature, I try to see, okay, how all these like good frameworks are doing it, what problems they are solving, what kind of issues they run into. So like you just go to the GitHub issues and you see, okay, if people have reported any issues around this particular feature, and you try to learn from that. This is how I like navigate for the most part.
Got it. Speaking of what you mentioned around issues, and then also, I mean, not just looking at how people are working through, but when you do get any kind of feature requests or any improvements from the community, right? How do you actually kind of look at balancing that? Okay, here are some of the feature requests that users and developers want versus this is what your vision is for the framework and how you want to kind of evolve it for the next release or so, etc. How do you balance that?
Yeah, I would say like that's a tough act to perform. Usually when it's like, okay, people are trying to fix something, it's like a very easy thing that you can merge. But when they are, like trying to basically contribute a complete feature, and there are chances maybe the feature is not done the way you would like it to be done, or maybe you don't even like want to include it, then it's mainly about like setting up the right expectations, talking to them, and explaining them like it's not part of the vision of the framework. Or maybe if it can be improved, let's say if it's more about how they have implemented it, but the feature itself is something we want, then it's more of like doing back and forth within the PR and merging it. But if it's something we don't want, then of course you have to let them know, even though the thing is nice, but it's like not something we needed in the framework. And of course, we usually tell people like not to open PRs right away, especially for really big features. It's always nice to start with a discussion and see if you want the thing and how it should be. Otherwise, you might like spend multiple weeks building something and eventually it will get rejected by the team.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, of course, I think it's always kind of like a tough act balancing that, which actually brings me to my next question as well. Was an incident like this, or was it something else that actually made you realize that open source, okay, wasn't just about publishing the code and putting it out over there, but actually kind of having that responsibility, building that community, and kind of stewarding where you're looking at driving this, etc. Was it a PR incident where something, where a user or a contributor built a really large feature, or you kind of had something else which came up for the first time?
Yeah, I think it's like more of a ongoing process that you learn things, and then you find out, okay, when you basically convey your ideas more actively with the community, people understand what you're trying to build. And they basically think about the framework or the thing you're building from the same lens. But I can like roughly remember a couple of PRs where some of the features were like added to the ORM, and I myself would have never added them. But again, it was like, okay, someone has spent so much time, so let's merge them in. And after a while, it turns out, okay, I have to like maintain those features, and there were like so many, I would say gaps in the way they were implemented. Again, nothing against the person who like built it, but that gave me like an understanding. Obviously, adding the feature is one thing, but now you have to maintain it forever, so you have to be a lot more cautious about adding those things, because everything you add now you maintain it like forever. So there were like a couple of peers like that. Other than that, it's more of a ongoing journey and learning and seeing like how you can convey your thoughts better with everyone. Like every time we are planning to do a major release, we come out with like these blog posts where we share, okay, what we are building, how we are trying to change things in the framework, and then everyone can like interact before we start building those things.
Got it. So as a maintainer, right, and of course, also being a maintainer of an opinionated framework, what kind of contributions are really valuable to you? Either from all the way from docs to code to also ecosystem support, and then spreading the word, etc. For you as a maintainer, and also for Adonis as a framework, what's really valuable?
I think people who are like contributing to the ecosystem, apart from like just adding the features to the framework or the official packages, is really helpful. Be it like, okay, we want to have this feature in our application and we will abstract it to a package and we will open source it. We even have like a directory where we list all these packages on our website. So that's really helpful. The other one is anyone who's trying to build like learning content around the framework, because like everyone has a different way of teaching it others, and the people usually try to learn things out of the documentation most of the time, and then they only refer to the documentation when they're building things. So yeah, anyone who's like building learning content around the framework is also super nice. And then the standard things, like if you find any bug, you fix it. If you find something can be improved, you do that. So yeah, that's pretty much all.
That's helpful. And I'm sure a lot of folks would be interested in that as well. Okay, speaking of contributions, right? Um, you kind of started the framework itself, and how would you really think about community governance itself? Are you looking at contributors who are contributing to the framework or creating more packages, and then helping them come on as a co-maintainer, or how are you looking at kind of really growing that support for developing Adonis itself for upcoming releases, with the help of community, of course, outside of contributions?
Yeah, I think like contributors matter a lot. Like one of the core team members, Julian, he started by building like these VS Code extensions for the framework. So like we have like this testing framework extension, and then we have the framework extension for VS Code. He started building those, and turns out he was like very passionate about the framework, and then he become like part of the core team. But even outside of that, if there are people who are trying to build things around the framework and they want to know like what are our plans on making their life easier around like the things they want to build, we obviously chat with them in Discord. I do jump on calls with people to understand what they're trying to build and how we can help them. So we have like this, I would say, back and forth conversation going on with like people who are actively contributing to the ecosystem. And yeah, I think that's all. Like community is like the biggest thing you can have. Even when on days when I'm not actively working on the framework, I can see releases being made. I can see people are building things around the framework. So that's like a really really nice thing to have around you.
Speaking of community, right? So how is the community around Adonis really grown? Were there some key moments when when it actually helped you grow a lot? Were there some very very conscious efforts that were taken to grow the community? Was it organic? Were there any moments? How did it grow right from a project which you thought, okay, I want to solve this for myself, to that, okay, this is helping a lot of developers right now?
I think I can like barely remember the initial days apart from knowing, okay, I built this, I put it on GitHub, and some people started using it because those were like very early users. So I very much like remember them by their name. But after that, maybe, like 3-4 years, again, it was like just an open source project. People discover it, they use it, they like show up on GitHub or any other discussion forums we have. And the very recent ones that I could remember is like Roman. He's again one of the core team members. He does like a lot of streams on Twitch related to his work and Adonis. So that helps basically grow the community a lot. But other than that, we like don't really put, I would say, much effort into seeing, okay, how we can make the framework popular. It's pretty much organic. If you're excited about something, of course we share it, but there is no like a plan around, okay, this is how we want to grow the community and these are the milestones. It's really organic on that front.
Got it. That's great. To see a project which initially started off solving an internal and your own use case and need being adopted by others as well. Um, can you share a bit around how does this work when it comes to sustaining and maintaining all of this as well? So a couple of different layers to kind of think about. There is, how does it work kind of sustaining and maintaining all of this on a long term, being a small team, and also how does it look like sustaining this with a framework and a project which has a large user base as well?
Yeah, I think like sustainability is always a question unless you build like a business around your project, because then, okay, you can like focus 100% on the project, and then you can also like hire people to work on the project. If you're not doing that, then it's pretty much all about like how strongly you believe in the thing you have built. I open sourced AdonisJS back in 2015. Now it's already been like 10 years. We never had any business around the framework. Of course, I did try a couple of things, like having GitHub sponsors to see, okay, maybe I can sustain working on the framework full time. I tried that for a couple of years. Didn't really work out. But other than that, it's like if I'm still building applications today for someone, and if it's a backend application, I don't see any other way to build it apart from using AdonisJS. Like that's strongly how I believe in it. And it's all like, oh, it's a tool I build, so I will be using it. Even if I say, okay, let me not like invest, or like let's not like put AdonisJS at the front. Are there any other tools I would like to use and enjoy at the same time? I really don't find anything. So still like strongly believing in the entire idea and how the framework have like come together is something that keeps me going, and still like having more releases, having more features, still maintaining it. That I would say is like the secret sauce for still working on it.
That's nice. It's good to hear about being really passionate about the solution that you're building, either with Adonis itself or for Adonis as well, etc. So that's really good to know. So let's talk a little bit about also kind of a bit of looking ahead. So what does a roadmap or like the next phase of Adonis really look like for you technically, either in terms of how you want to grow the project itself, or how you're thinking of supporting the community as well?
I would say like the core pieces of the framework I see to remain pretty much the same, apart from like improving things over time, or maybe one thing like we do a lot is anytime Node.js adds support for something, and we have been doing it in our own custom way, we just remove that and we start using the platform. So that's kind of like a ongoing maintenance thing that keeps on happening within the framework. So the core pieces will pretty much remain the same, and maybe like we will invest more time in like creating high level tools on top of framework. One idea that I have like for a very long time, and maybe this is like the perfect moment to do it, is a monitoring tool. It could be initially like just a development only monitoring tool, where you can see like how many requests came to your application. Okay, within a given request, how many queries you fired, which queries were slow, how many templates you rendered, what was the graph of the templates, if you're like using components there, did you send any email during this HTTP request or not. Basically all these metrics that you can see inside a tool. So that is like one thing we want to build. Other than that, it's like, as I said, the core is going to be more or less the same. It's having like more missing features on top of the framework.
Got it. That actually answers one of my upcoming questions also, that I was really wanted to know, as to what was the one feature that was really kind of brewing in your mind. And I think you pretty much answered that, of having this kind of a monitoring tool to really look at what all is happening across the stack and the framework as well. So, thinking a little bit of also, say, maintaining all of this, and also burnout as a maintainer for this, right? Have there kind of been any moments when you probably thought of considering really stepping away from the day to day of working on building the framework itself? Or how has that really been? Because a decade, 10 years of maintaining it is quite a while.
Yeah, I think that happens quite often, to be honest. uh, the one which like went to the extreme of thinking, okay, like let's move on and do something else, I think that happened somewhere in 2018. For a brief period of 6 months, I like barely did anything in the framework. And I was like, okay, maybe there are other frameworks I can use if I want to build my own applications. And I should not like really focus on AdonisJS. But then I started working with someone who was, starting their startup. They wanted to build like the very first MVP of their product. And that made me think, okay, let me use AdonisJS for this, and which like ignited my love again for the framework. So that was like one moment where it went to that extreme. But usual burnout like happen all the time. It's like you're working on something and you're very passionate about it, you share it with everyone, and you barely see like anyone noticing it. Or maybe you encounter some I would say not really fights, but like back and forth with someone who's like not really happy with something, and then you question, okay, why am I like even doing all this uh, for just basically getting hate online. So these kind of moments do come, but if you like just sleep on them maybe for a couple of days, and then you just like move on and you start just doing the things that you love, I would say.
Got it. Got it. Outside of also some of these challenges, like of course, um, helping grow, manage, govern, steward the community itself, and also dealing through burnout, dealing through a lot of tough choices and questions, etc. What's something about being an open source maintainer that probably many developers or even open source contributors don't really realize or even appreciate?
I think maintaining the thing is like far more difficult than building it. Like initially you're excited, you want to build something, you want to put it out. So you have like this excitement phase, and barely anyone is like relying on it. But once you have built the thing, now people are relying on it. You have to be like more careful about the breaking changes. You have to make sure that the thing is like in a maintained position. Maybe you have like more ideas that you want to explore, and you are like so much tired of that. But on top of that, you have like this maintenance work of the existing things which are out. So that's like one underappreciated thing. Like maybe you spend a day fixing uh, 10 reported bugs on the tool, right? And you just do a release. This is like not the most fanciest release you made, because it only has like all these bug fixes and not like anything shiny or anything new that people really wanted to see. But it's like still the important part of maintaining a project.
Got it. That's really helpful to know, and also like how you mentioned, probably one of the more lesser known, lesser appreciated part is that in a scenario today where there are, of course, so many dependencies for any specific project that you are building on, you would have to ensure things around compatibility, things around security, things around a whole lot of different things, which also account to maintaining it, and not just about maintaining, your written code as well, but also all of the transitive
Yeah.
dependencies and everything else that are being maintained, and things like that, right? So that's helpful. That's helpful to know.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. I like even have like a thing at like top of my mind right now. So AdonisJS applications are like written in TypeScript, and when you run your development application, we are not like compiling TypeScript to JavaScript. We just like use a just-in-time compiler, which basically uh, runs your TypeScript code and compiles it as files are getting imported. And making this entire thing work with every new release of like TypeScript, and then the tooling that you're using around it, is really like time consuming. And most of the people like don't even see it. And sometimes you think, okay, I'm like spending so much time on these like low level tools and making sure that they work fine, but at the end of the day they like don't even impact what people are writing. So that's like one example that I can remember around this.
but of course, those really help when it comes to the overall aspects of the framework itself. But there's so much that happens under the hood that actually contributes to that experience of using the framework, right?
Yeah, exactly, it does.
Got it. So one of the things, and coming towards the end also, Harminder, is that a lot of developers today are building so many different tools, frameworks, or kind of solving kind of different problems that either other peer developers are facing or other teams, organizations are facing, etc. Based on your experience, what advice would you really give someone who is building either their own dev tool or a framework, a library, or anything of that sort from scratch?
You mean like advice around how they could like go about building it, or is it like around how? So I'm just like trying to understand on like which
Yeah.
particular thing.
Anything based on what you think was a really good learning that you would like to pass on, saying that either, hey, this really helped me, so you can do this, or this was a really big learning for me not to do, so please don't do this. It could be around
Yeah.
technical aspects, around code itself, or around community, or around usage, or around maintenance. Pretty much anything, whatever comes on top of mind.
Yeah, I think like in order to do anything, I think for me, like what really works is like the right motivation behind building something. For me, it always has been, okay, I want to do this thing. This is like the problem for me, and I want to solve it, and I just go ahead and do it. And as long as that problem stays, I continue to maintain those tools. So if the motivations are right, if you're doing it, like for solving something that like basically that a problem that you have, I think you will enjoy the experience more. Maybe you will maintain those libraries and packages more. And what not to do, I think if you think something is not like a good fit in your project, and someone has contributed it, I think you should not hesitate to say no. I know it feels like really bad to say no to someone or like close their PR, but at the end of the day, you will have like less code to maintain. The people who are using your tool may have like a more pleasant experience versus like you just start accepting all the features, and then eventually your tool like becomes really really hard to maintain, and then the actual users who are using it will be suffering. So anytime you think something is not a good fit, just like feel free to say no, and don't like feel too much bad about that.
One of the things, and for all of those who are tuning in as well or watching this live, this is the thing which I've heard in all of my conversations with maintainers is a really good project comes out of a problem that you faced, you are trying to solve, and building a solution for that. Rather than kind of saying that, okay, here is something which I don't know why I'm building or what I'm building, but I want to build, so I'm kind of building it. So this is a very, very common theme I've heard from so many different projects and maintainers, that it started off as a problem, a need, or a solution which was not existing, and then kind of trying to fill that gap, and then going ahead and building it in the open along with the community. That's really helpful advice, Harminder. Thanks for sharing that. So for those of you who are tuning in live, feel free to share any of your comments that you have, or of course reach out to Harminder on many different social channels or on GitHub itself. Before that, Harminder, any final thoughts or anything else that you would like to share with developers?
I would say not really. On the last thing that you were touching, like if you scratch your own itch, I think it helps you in two ways. First, it becomes the guiding light of what you want to do with the thing that you're building. Like if you want to add any features, you know the motivation behind it. You understand the problem. And second, it helps you stay motivated about the thing because you build it like to solve a real issue that you have, versus maybe you were like just excited, you build like something toy, and maybe within few months you don't really have any motivation. So having that thing helps you in like in two ways: motivation, and also becomes the guiding light. So yeah, that's all. Nothing else much to share.
Thanks for that, Ravinder. And of course, your work around Adonis and everything else is noticed. Just like one of our viewer over here sharing that they're a big fan and very grateful for all of your work. And that's also, I think, one of the beautiful aspects of working in the open and building something which is being used by developers, is that it's something which is gonna stay on for a really long time, and also continue to be used by various different folks for different use cases as well. And someday when they are looking at saying that, okay, I'm gonna do this, something like this on my own in open, or otherwise they're gonna think about, okay, here was an inspiration for something that I was building, and probably to draw inspiration, etc. So sooner or later, work will definitely get noticed as well. All right, so that's about it that I had from my end, Harminder. Thank you so much for joining the Open Source Friday live stream, sharing about Adonis, some of the decisions behind why and how it was built, and also aspects around the community, and also your own journey, challenges, and other things which are faced, and also, of course, your helpful advice to other developers who are looking to build as well. So thank you so much, Harminder, and for all of you, who are tuning in. You can check out Adonis on github.com/Adonis/code. That's That's the core repo. So thank you so much, Harminder, and it was nice having you here on Open Source Friday.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that was Harminder, the creator and maintainer of AdonisJS framework. It was really nice hearing about so many different things about the framework itself and also Harminder's journey, etc. And thanks to all of you for tuning in live or watching this later on. So Open Source Friday live streams are, like how I mentioned earlier, is a way for us to bring the open source community together by showcasing a whole lot of different maintainers, projects, creators, etc. And also letting you know about what's happening in the ecosystem and learn from other folks as well, and really look at various different projects that you could contribute to or even start using. So stay tuned to GitHub social channels wherever you follow GitHub for many of the Open Source Friday live streams that happen across various different time zones to connect with maintainers and projects like this, and learn a lot more about what's happening as well. So that's me signing off. Thank you again for tuning in. This is Karan from GitHub. Bye.